being here. The four poets, Lady Diane Beverly, Patrick Washington, Diane Wilbon Parks, and myself, welcome you. And we're joined this evening by Cliff Bernier on harmonica. We'll also be showing some artwork by Diane Wilbon Parks as well. And so with that, Cliff, maybe you can get us started again with a little bit of harmonica, and then hopefully Lady Di will be back in time to read her section. Thank you, Cliff. And Diane, did you want to show one of your paintings?
Let's see. Hold on. I'm texting.
Okay. Well, while we're working on...
Do you see her coming back in, Hiram?
I don't quite yet. While we're kind of waiting for Lady Di to rejoin, let me just mention a couple of things in terms of All About Woodlawn. Woodlawn is a historic estate plantation in Fairfax, Virginia, that is built on property once owned by George Washington. There's a picture of it right there. His step-granddaughter, Nellie Custis, and her husband built Woodlawn on the property. And in its heyday, it was inhabited by 9 whites and served by 90 slaves. The record of those slaves is largely unwritten, unknown, and silent. I think they have a few of their first names in a ledger, and that's about it. They don't know where they lived on the property. They don't know who did what, but we do know that they were responsible for building Woodlawn and, of course, for maintaining it. 4 poets, the 4 I named here a few minutes ago, visited Woodlawn about this time last year and wrote about the experience of being there and imagining that enslaved community. And so this evening is an homage to those 90 silenced slaves. And so is Lady Di back on?
Hiram, I'm not sure what happened. She said it kicked her off, so I suspect.
Okay. Well, I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead with my section.
Yes.
And then we'll just proceed, and hopefully she'll be able to get back on.
Sure.
So this is a piece that I wrote while I was there at Woodlawn. The entire poem is called Vista Blur, but I'm only going to read one small section of that because it's a pretty long piece. This is titled Vista Blur, and it tries to kind of imagine... Oh, there's Lady Di. Lady Di, would you like to... Are you okay? You're still muted. She's muted. Let's see if we can get Lady Di, because you really need to hear her voice to get it all started. There we go. Lady Di, you're unmuted now.
Sorry.
No problem. So Lady Di, we've welcomed people, and we're right now ready to hear your first set, if you're willing and able.
My first poem?
Yes.
Something came over me. Emotions soar high above cloudy gray skies. Silent tears slide quietly down my face, dabbed with cotton-laced handkerchief. Warrior queen rides bravely, ready to see all my ancestors endured. Entering grounds of plantation, unkept grounds, unpainted shack greet my entrance. Exquisite mansion with manicured lawns in sight at horizon. Gorgeous crepe myrtle, a splendid fave of mine. Sensational greeting to soothe my soul, ease my mind. Wondering, how would I have responded? Like queen leader I am today? Like Harriet, going back and forth to get away? To be strong, to help others to accept no wrong? Like Fannie Lou Hamer, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Something came over me. There's still superiority. We must stand strong to remain free. Do not be intimidated. Do not be afraid. Be true. Be real. Share righteous goodness of life. Do what you feel. Accept opportunities. Do not let fear be a factor. Replace fear with faith. Listen, trust, obey.
Thank you, Lady Di. That was Ladi Di Beverly reading the first piece in this evening's program called Voices of Woodlawn. I'm Hiram Larew, and for those of you who are just joining us, Woodlawn is a historic estate plantation in Fairfax, Virginia, that was owned and lived in by 9 whites and served by 90 enslaved. And the poets this evening, Ladi Di Beverly, Diane Wilbon Parks, Patrick Washington, and I visited Woodlawn about this time last year for a day and wrote about that experience of being there with the spirits of the enslaved community. And so you just heard Lady Di's first poem. Each poet is going to be reading, we're going to have 3 rounds of short poems so that you get a flavor of some, just some, of the work that was produced. You'll also be seeing some artwork that was produced by Diane Wilbon Parks, and you'll hear harmonica played so beautifully by Cliff Bernier. This is a small excerpt of a longer poem that I wrote while I was at Woodlawn called, the poem itself is called Vista Blur. Clouds of branches uneven were, as smoke became my windows or lingering hams. With the voices in vines along my whispering paths and their echoes of what was, but still is, what happened here? These voices that precious the lawn sweeps now across the vistas and yearnings, they river my overs from their corners of greed and freedoms so wanted, with their views of these sunrises that hope prayed for and gathered about. These views that are now gone from and just hardly and blur blue. These stitches of accents sweetly as oaks that were here when abiding was tobacco and corn, when poorly was sadly but richness. Yes, all of my hoops are flung widely across skins of years. What happened here? Around me and by me and through me, these fork tines of land love and shame. And now we'll hear from Diane Wilbon Parks.
Hello, hello. It's so wonderful to see all of you this evening. So I'll get started because my poems are a little bit longer than Hiram's. This poem is entitled Reclamation. I am here to interpret the life of the enslaved. I am here to discover what was and what was not. I am here to carry your voice in my hand, hold it up to the sky where your voice will open itself, will speak words into mine, from the fields to the bricks, to the compounding metal shovels, digging inside my hand. Your hands, your stories, without words, without songs, no records, no birth dates, no birthdays, no names, no family history, not one surname, not one house or frame of any of the 91 enslaved people at Woodlawn. There's an ancestor inside me, waving smoke signals, writing unchained words, telling me stories written from rice, written from fields, from laboring, from plantation. History planted in fields, then washed by rain, harvested by interpreters. There is a deepening rising in the voice of old, in the voice of ancestors, voices leaning up from sleeping bones. The doors are tilted from the other side to reclaim what was lost. Come, I can hear your echoes. Come, I can feel your breathing inside me. Come, I will hold your heavy hands of callus, of mud. I hear the voices of your shadows sliding in between forbidden doors. The latch is removed, come in. So many ancestors are present in me and my bones. They rattle with your skeletons. We are here to reclaim what history has lost. It is my wish for 6 chimneys to breathe you out from the soot of far places, to reveal your 91 names, where you will glisten in sunlight and become more than an interpretation.
Thank you, Diane. Wonderful. And we'll close this set with a poem or two by Patrick Washington.
Good evening. Hope everybody's doing well. Happy Juneteenth to all. And my first piece is called First Walk. I am not being led through these genteel halls. I'm being pushed. Each threshold crossed feels like praise forced through fearful throats. The words of our God with reverence, as if the echo from these walls could actually reach out and slap you. And as they deliver their careful sermon, I wonder, was God ever really inside here? The wood smells of elegance, care, and surfaces, so polished that any particles daring to show up would undoubtedly slide off to the floor. After all, we are not here to see dirt, are we? Like a troublesome teen, I stand in certain places longer than I should, reach for delicate things I know I shouldn't, and nothing happens to me. This tour, though informative, ignored certain queries. Are the brick and mortar walls thick enough to muffle the moans of the people outside? Did they ever use that same cross-stitch sewing style from these beautiful pillows to close the skin of the disobedient? I walk to the glorious front entrance, and after 200 years, the Corinthian marble at the door still looks as if each slab had been carefully laid there by angelic hands, and they had. One more question, ma'am. Did the masters of Woodlawn ever realize just how close they were to God? And am I to do another one? Is that what I'm hearing? I guess so.
I think Cliff maybe will play, if that's okay, Patrick.
Okay.
Cliff, you need to unmute. Yeah.
We are celebrating Juneteenth 2020. Juneteenth means for African Americans what 4th of July means for all of us: freedom. Crepe myrtle for me. Magenta magic centerfold. Swaying in hot pink balmy breeze, like soothing zephyr, my heart appease. Biggest crepe myrtle I have ever seen. A powerhouse of comfort unforeseen. At second glance, two trees united, standing tall, stretched across plantation's grounds in middle of manicured lawns. A grand decoration realization hits me. My imagination caught hold of me, imagining what slaves actually encountered. Beaten, tortured, hung, separated from family, absent from love, long hours of labor with no pay. Crepe myrtle temporarily comforts, distract what my ancestors really went through. Sad, so sad, racism is still king. Sad, so sad, oppression is still alive. Sadder than sad, some do not realize, refuse to recognize. We need to step up, teach our children our history, press forward for equal rights, equal pay, respect, and democracy. Never give up the fight. Freedom ain't free. True, I'm no better than anybody. Nobody is any better than me. Thank you, Crepe Myrtle, for unity and comfort of standing together under branches of your spectacular tree.
Thank you, Ladi Di Beverly. Just a couple of other things as we move along. We are recording this session, and so it will be available hopefully afterwards for viewing later on and at your convenience and at friends' convenience. We are also live streaming this show, this presentation, out to Facebook on several pages, so people are having a chance to join us there. In the main hallway of Woodlawn, there was a beautifully framed convex mirror, a fisheye mirror, that we were told was used so that the masters could signal to the slaves what needed to be done, and the slaves would not be seen by anyone. This piece is titled Mirror Mine. I'm looking on and circling in. I'm so much from and never was, this far off place and after then. I'm Nellie Custis of and learning poor. and wobbling through, but never walked this hallway. I ask inside and hold for dear. I keep and smear and swear and dance. I've soaped the dish and pit the spat, but nothing else is like this convex mirror. Nothing's all these colors of, or history's bowl, or looms of fray. Gazing near and back at me, this story curved and calling. No, I'm as hollow as this forward past, these widening ways, with fuller, wronger views of here inside of then. We'll now hear from Diane.
This poem is really written from my interpretation and from the voice of a slave. And this is entitled Hopeful Birds. It rained here, not from the tears of gray skies, but those who shed and bled here. They watered this land, grew it up, these fields, those hands, this place, their demands, this ghostly space, 91 enslaved and erased. Ain't nobody sorrowed for the ones wiped clean from their morrows. We interpret their voices, their contributions. Each one of them, hopeful buds they are, stretched into gold strand, becoming the shine that opens up the sleeves of trees. They will pull way beyond brilliance, the kind that blinds beyond what your eyes are willing to see. Hopeful songbirds they are, whispering under the saturated leaf, celebrating the daring, the crumbs, and the least. They leak into hum, race into some, a race of corn, their chain of gold, the bearding walls that bind, secrets that hold, like rope gathered around slavery's neck, and the shackled hearts of uncompromising men, sifting through bloodlines and generations without forgiveness, without care, while slavery's backs folds and rise out of fields, out of Nellie's looms, out of spiral time. God's been watching for a time such as this. 4 hopeful birds dance into bravery enough to say, I will speak for you. Our voice is your voice, balancing on bravery's wings. These hopeful birds will whisper into the horn-shaped widening of these hands and these doors.
Yes. This piece is called Classical Design. She says, surprisingly, slaves weren't unskilled labor. There were actual blacksmiths, workers, masons, and carpenters. So I listened to their work. Wood nicked and sculpted, everything original but glass. Wrought iron weeps of wisdom, but silent. Concrete and metal argue in places over whether or not they should break up. Rust growls in agreement. Paint flakes, either which way is fine with them. Bricks form scabs of moss, and she asks us to marvel at what she calls classical European design. But it's made by African craftsmen, and I can only think, no, that's classical American design. Here, let me fix that for you. Surprisingly, these skilled labor weren't just slaves. They also began as families, parents, children, elders, teachers, farmers, philosophers, astronomers, and craftsmen. Be sure to mention the backlash against Black alchemists after emancipation for taking good white jobs. Walk them to the spot where you believe the slaves live. Might be the parking lot. Could be a manicured garden. You may end up in the middle of the forest. Look for loose wood or any sign of chattel slavery. Then note the classical American design.
How would you feel? A feeling comes over me uncontrollably. I wonder how one race could feel superior to another. A horrible feeling, wondering how would you feel if you or your loved one were whipped and hung? How would you feel if your babies were sold to someone else and you didn't know who or where? Lord have mercy, never to see your child again. Tell me, how would you feel if you had to stand by in silence while your wife was violated, raped, and abused? How would you feel if you could never pick enough bales of cotton in scorching, blazing hot sun? How would you feel if you could never pick up a book, were not allowed to learn or read anything? Tell me, think about it. How would you feel? How would you feel if you had to walk around in rags all day, day in and day out, no shoes on feet, minimum food to eat? I want to know. Tell me, how would you feel? How would you feel if you had to enter through back door or not at all? Eat in kitchen or not at all? My heart and my soul says, let it be told, it would not feel good to you.
Thank you, Lady Di. One quick note, we will end the program with this last third set and then have time for any and all to ask questions or provide thoughts. So if you can hang tight and get through powerful poems like Lady Di just presented, we'll have time to interact here in just a few minutes. This last piece of mine is not written so much about Woodlawn as it is about the four of us as we wrote about Woodlawn. It's titled Bells. Together, we are so wonderfully different, these four bells of us. Each our very own sound, each distinctly tuned to this world of need. In and through our ringing words of witness. Our ready bells, eager each to tell the story of stories never told at all. So hear the bolding bells held high up overhead, clanging crisp with concerns of anger. And hear as much our heart-held bells that echo years of questions, full of whys and hows. And then hear and hear again the gonging bells for our history's waking and for our every need to listen to these day dawn, nighttime, beyonding bells, to these won't be silent ever again, shining, glistening bells. Listen to these voices joined to these voices so full that we almost can't, to these voices so sure that yes, indeed, we always will. Listen to these waiting bells in all of us. May they ring through us like tomorrow.
Okay, so this next poem, I just want you to see if you can channel just like I did. I wrote this poem when I was at the plantation, at the estate, and it's called First Impressions Last. Friday, August 2nd, was more than a day of whispers. It was an invitation to step back into time, into the timid feet of riverbanks, into the thin haze of the threading and unraveling of 91 slaves and their contributions. My heart began to write your 91 imagined lives into this frame, this new opening, this mind. Your souls laying to rest in these walls and me. Your spirit met me and my tears as I drove in. I am already changed. I surveyed Woodlawn and saw you, all of you, in bricks, in mantles, in rooms, throughout the grounds. I looked up at the balcony, imagining where your heels and toes might have touched a patch of grass. As I leaned over into thought, I felt your feet touching mine, carrying me to a mansion, beautifully distorted. This mansion once lived with you and your silence and your lost names. Right here, in this place where I'm standing, where you rivered your tears, each of you known to Woodlawn by only one name, slave. You've been erased. The tours vaguely remembers you. But I see you here, right here, in the careful placement of bricks, of spiral staircases, of marble, of doors, of windows, the scent of silence. Oh, the scent of silence. And the scent of you is strong. The odor of mistakes float in every room. How will we fix this? Even the emptiest space imprison your dreams, your expressions, your thoughts. As my eyes drift along the carved mantle, I imagine your eyelids opening like heavy concrete doors. I wonder if your mantle, your skin was ever a mask of markings. Wonder if you were bruised to your bones, where pain finished the carvings of your marrow. You were here, right here, where I stand, as pure as white, enters room to leave no trace of life. The etchings of your past, cradled in scuff marks on wooden floors. The arresting wake of your voices still leaves impressions on walls, on us, on me. How will we begin to fix this lasting impression?
Beautiful. And my last piece, I too was inspired by the curved mirror that Hiram spoke about. so eloquently earlier. My poem is simply called The Signal. Yes, sir. How may I be of service? Would you like another man? See, I learned quickly. Never got hit once. Seen enough overseers erupt wrath all over niggas who stepped out of place or simply stood too tall. Still carry the ash in my pockets to remind me. Shook their fragments out of my hair. Got myself straight. Now I wear the best clothes. Eat the best food. I've been crowned the most blessed of all the cursed in 2,000 acres. So I stand here. Ears and eyes. Body with no mouth until addressed. My willingness to please and posture places me at the head of the line. I got good at counting how many times they lift their cups to sip. 4 times, then I step out. If the guest knocks their tea to the floor, I'm gonna make sure my apology swoops into the room before my body ever does. This damn Earl Grey been misbehaving all week, and the teacup might have jumped. I stand in perfect stillness, rave for favor, eyes holding every curve of the butler's mirror, searching for a sign of life. I don't know what it's like to be called a man, but I know I'm closer than I was yesterday, so yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Please, let me get that for you. So I wanna go ahead. I wanna thank everybody for joining us. Now this is the time where we hear from you, and we kind of share some of our thoughts. And hopefully, if you have any questions or thoughts, you can type them into the chat box, or if you're on Facebook, you can leave them there, and it will be relayed here. Yes, perfect music, Cliff. Thank you, Cliff, for for delivering that. You set the tone perfectly.
And Patrick, I wonder, could I ask a question of my co-poets? I'd just be interested in if they'd be willing to share, as we kind of get the question and answers rolling, if they'd be willing to share what they felt what you felt as you came into Woodlawn. You were brave to come to Woodlawn, and I'm just interested in the emotions and how you felt as literally you drove in that day. Diane, maybe you could.
Okay, I can start off. I can tell you, I'm from Georgia, so driving to Georgia, I've done that so many times, and I have passed cotton fields, but somehow riding into Woodlawn, it's like, I can't explain it. It was overwhelming. It felt as though all of these ancestors, their spirits, they were waiting for us. I met them as I was driving in. It was so heavy. And I started crying because I didn't know if I should turn around or if I should keep going. And I'm so glad that I did, because it did open a lot of doors in me, so that I had this ability to write from a place that I wasn't aware was there. Even my art, the art that you all have seen, all of that came out of this experience. So for me, although it was heavy, it was different, it definitely opened doors.
Thanks, Diane. Lady Di?
Well, I'm going to say that I had mixed emotions from receiving the invitation, and I prayed as I do on everything. And going in there, I was just feeling sad that there was such a place, a plantation. But after I got there, I felt the strength of my ancestors. And that's when I started to write. I didn't do much of the tour. I didn't really want to see the inside of the house on the plantation. I was very moved by the feeling that I was feeling of my ancestors saying, thank you for awakening attention to us. And that's what I wrote from. And I thank you, Hiram, for the invitation and the opportunity to express myself in a poetic way. Thank you.
Okay, so somebody asked if you could describe Woodlawn in one word. And I'm trying to come up with a word. Right now, the word I'm thinking is unfinished. You know, there's a lot of unresolved issues, you know, as you walk through the place. Oh, it's beautiful, you know, but we know the ugliness behind that. We know that, for those who don't know the history, it was a very unsuccessful business venture. You know, if you want to, you know, be cold about it, the people who ran the plantation initially just ran in the ground, and I think there was a reason for that. Because it wasn't built on a, you know, it wasn't being run on a morally sound foundation. Does that make sense? So I feel like, you know, it was doomed. It was destined to fail. This was not like a labor of love or anything when I was asked to do it. It was a challenge. It was a challenge of the spirit. It was a challenge of your, yeah, I realized, or I understood, that several other poets were asked, several better poets were asked, and they turned it down, and I understand why. You know, and I don't blame anybody for not stepping foot on such a place. You know, if you don't, you know, if you're not prepared spiritually, you know, or mentally, yeah, it can take a lot out of you. And yeah, it took me a while. It took me a while. Matter of fact, it took me several trips to really capture everything I needed to, because my first time walking on there, I was seething and I couldn't think straight. You know, so I had to go back later on and realize it's not about, you know, unresolved issues and you know, white supremacy as much as these are 90 human beings. And so then I had to realize that I need to try to capture their story individually. So that's when I eased into the role.
I love the question, Debbie. Thank you for asking. For me, though, the one word would be haunting, or haunted, or haunting, simply because I can't leave it alone. It continues to, for me, I have the question in my mind, you know, what did happen here and why and how. And Patrick, just to go back to one thing you said, something about that other poets were asked maybe better. No one better could have come to Woodlawn to, you know, to evoke and share your thoughts than Patrick Washington. So glad that you were, as I said, brave enough to do that. I don't know if Diane or Lady
No,
Di.
I would say that my word,
Yeah.
Hiram, I would say empty. And that's what it felt hollow at some points. Just walking around and seeing even the chamber, there's a chamber, and I don't know if I want to talk about that, where they kept a pot for waste, for their waste. And to know that, someone who had to actually go in there and remove that, it was just daunting and haunting for me to stand in front of it and to look inside and know that our ancestors, many of our ancestors, had to remove their waste, and it's very sad. It really was.
One word for me is mockery. I can't see glorifying having a museum where my people were treated so badly. So I didn't care to see the polished floors and the marble and the brass, and I didn't care to see that. But I, like I said before, happy that I received strength from the spirit of my ancestors.
One thing we also need to keep in mind is that Woodlawn is just one of many, many, many such plantation estates, historic plantation estates.
I see that our Maryland State Poet Laureate a statement of light, darkness, and light.
Yes.
And that goes along with me feeling bitter and sweet. So I love the fact that she's here with us, and I feel her loving spirit. Anybody that knows our State Poet Laureate knows that we all should pick up that type of kindness for every individual that we come in contact with. All of us feel that Grace loves me best. And when you're around her with some other folks, you feel Grace loves everyone.
Yes, she does. She does.
She loves me best, though. She loves me best.
I know. Look, I was about to say that. Grace loves me.
See? Grace, we want to hear from you, Grace.
Yeah, we got to hear from you, Grace.
Yeah,
you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, maybe I have to
unmute Grace.
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's see if I can do. There we go. Let's see. I just asked her to unmute. I don't know if that'll work or not.
Oh, thank you.
There you
Honestly, you're my people. You're my favorite poets. Honestly, I wouldn't miss this for the world. Lady Di, you know how I feel. Diane, you know how I feel. Patrick, Hiram, you know, one by one, changing the world one by one. It just takes one person every day to do this, one person every day to say this. Really, I feel something good happening from that dreadful, dreadful plantation with its horrible past. Look what's happened. Art has come from that, and art heals. So from the dreadful past, I say you're shining light on the darkness. Every one of you. What a wonderful thing for us to be together on this night. Thank you so much. Hiram, thank you so much for all you do, initiating ideas, always pushing us further. Keep pushing. I love you best. I love you best. I love you best. I love you best.
We love you.
I love you too, Grace.
That was Grace Cavallari, Maryland State Poet Laureate.
That's right.
Wonderful.
Gracie.
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever been muted by anyone.
Oh dear. Oh my goodness. Definitely the last.
I know, let's hear more.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Don't be shy.
Well, they're probably muted, so maybe what they need to do is raise their hand and I can unmute them. Yeah, Susan, let me unmute Susan. Hold on just a second.
And then we have Jeff and Laura.
Okay, Susan, you're unmuted now.
Okay, well, all of the words, all four of you were magnificent. And I wanted to say also that, especially Lady Di, the power of your words. I think for the first time, I am really hearing the thrust of it. And I'm so happy for that. And I think what Grace said is every day, a step forward, every day.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Susan.
Sure.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for all that you do in the arts and poetry.
Yes. And I was looking for
And
Jeff
Jeff
and Laura.
and
I don't see them on the list here. That's weird.
they
Is
were there. I saw them and they were
Gotcha.
together.
Okay. Well, I don't. Oh, there they are. Okay.
Laura and
Yeah,
Jeff,
yeah.
and
Got
wanted
it.
to
Got it.
speak.
Okay. I just sent them an ask to unmute message, so hopefully they'll be able to unmute.
There we go.
Yeah. Good. There they are. Hey.
Kisses. Happy Juneteenth to all you beautiful people. I was wondering, where will the bells visit next?
Oh.
Good question. And I think we're open to, we wanted to see how this went this evening, because this is kind of new to all of us, as you can probably tell. But we thought, we'd give it a whirl tonight, and then when Carnegie Hall calls or Hollywood, we'll be open to those kind of, invitations. But seriously, I think we will be looking for other places to present the work.
Actually, I see us at the Kennedy Center soon.
There you go.
You have to speak it into existence.
Yes.
Well, there's nothing like the words I've heard tonight. I hear a lot of poetry, but the words I heard tonight were really significant. I think they need to have a bigger platform.
Thank you so much.
But you're good at finding. How about the State House? I mean, the Capitol. How about one of the major buildings when we're allowed to be together?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about a big room in one of your places, Grace, like the Library of Congress?
If I can, I will.
I know you will. I just thought I'd ask.
And Debbie has suggested it would be great to share it in schools, and I couldn't agree more.
Yes.
Debbie is my sister.
There we go.
Oh.
So she's got to be correct. She's got to
Yes.
be right.
Debbie. Debbie, you want to speak?
She's
I'd like to see Debbie's face. Can we
let's
unmute
see.
her?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's my
sorry. I
sissy.
keep forgetting I need to unmute her. Yeah, there, Debbie, you're unmuted now.
She's
Oh.
still muted?
I think I'm a Debbie too.
Oh, I'm
okay.
sorry. Oh, Debbie, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah.
Uh-oh, sorry,
So
Debbie.
let me unmute the other Debbie too.
Okay.
I just sent the other Debbie request to unmute.
Yeah.
And then we're going to need to kind of bring it to a close here.
Is she unmuted? She's still not unmuted. Debbie, you're not
Well, I
unmuted.
sent her a message asking her to unmute.
The Debbie that was on unmuted, does she want to say something? You
Well,
had her on the screen.
Sure, I'll say
Yes.
something. I was the one that wrote about it should be in schools, and I was just thinking this would be
Oh.
such an incredible thing to share in the schools. I mean, it's so moving, and to get them to have a feeling for what it was like for those people, as you so vividly and beautifully expressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. That's why I wanted to hear what you had to say. Okay, so
Thank
that's
you,
the
Lady Di.
Debbie that it was. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
And Miss
Alrighty.
Cayenne has asked a couple of questions in the chat box. Diane repeated the number 91, and I heard Hiram say there were 90 enslaved. Was this intentional? And Patrick, you indicated it was a failed business venture, yet it is considered historic. There are several plantations. What made this place so historic?
Well, let me answer the 90 versus the 91. I always say 91 in all of my poems because as an interpreter, I am too enslaved. So though there were 90, and I include myself in that process as an interpreter when I start writing.
And I think, Ms. Cayenne, we just consider it, I mean, it is considered historic simply because it was built, what, maybe 200, close to 200 years ago. So I think that's, you know, that's where we come.
And it was owned by George Washington.
And it was, the property was owned by George Washington. It's right across the Potomac River from, or right, it's very close to Mount Vernon, yeah.
Woo!
And
Brody want to talk.
Yeah. So maybe one last question here. I'm just reading here. I can't get through all of them, but Sandy Yaun from, I've seen her and heard her wonderful work on some of the Zoom poetry sessions from out west. This work reminds me of Marilyn Nelson's book, The Freedom Business, Connecticut Landscapes Through the Eyes of Venture Smith. Marilyn was Connecticut State Poet Laureate. Thank you for pointing that out, Sandy. We'll have to take a look at her words. We're going to record or keep the chat room so that we can go back and hopefully answer or respond to all the wonderful comments of everyone. But I think to bring it to a close so that we respect everyone's time and the 60-minute limit we put on it, we'll turn it back to Diane and Cliff.
Okay, right before I came on, I lit this candle. I always light a candle for the ancestors. I will blow this candle out. So let me just give you my closing statement. In closing, we thank Cliff Bernier, who has played during this wonderful reading. We thank Don for giving us the platform, Don Krieger, Marissa Michelle. We thank the folks at Woodlawn, as well as the folks at the Interloop. We would also like to thank you, our Zoom and Facebook Live audience, for attending this poetic interpretation of our visit to Woodlawn Plantation Estates, and for commemorating and celebrating Juneteenth with us. I'd like to add my own personal thought to this, and I just want to say I thank God for this evening and for this platform, for us to be able to share our work with you. Again, thank you for attending this evening, and I blow out the candle.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Juneteenth.
Good night.